Happy Wednesday. Yes, come on in, pull up a chair because the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com. So today happens to mark the 210th episode of The Daily Dope. So kick on back, just relax. Today's going to be a little bit different. I only have one news piece today. And I wasn't going to actually do news today because I am going to dig into the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay from my good friends over at Cubicle 7 Entertainment. And we are actually going to page through this in its entirety, right? But there was a news piece that I did want to share because I think it's some pretty important news in regards to Chaosium. So I will talk about that in just a few moments. But do want to point out that if this is your first time popping in, this is a live stream. If you are watching live on YouTube, feel free to say hello in chat. If you have a question, or just want to say hi, or maybe you want to take a closer look at something with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, by all means, chime in and I will respond. There is no chat on screen. It's one of the ways that I try to keep some of the stranger commenters at bay. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into the one news piece today because Chaosium Inc. had actually revealed that Greg Stafford's King Arthur Pendragon role-playing game and Prince Valiant, the storytelling game, are now going to be through Chaosium, not Nocturnal Media. And one of the reasons why I wanted to share this news piece is just yesterday, I was talking about the Prince Valiant storytelling role-playing game. So that's why I wanted to point this out, because as I was actually talking about the hardcover books for the core book and the episodes book for Prince Valiant becoming available soon, turns out Chaosium had closed the deal as far as actually getting Greg Stafford's King Arthur Pendragon and Prince Valiant back to Chaosium. So here's the dope. Chaosium Inc., original publishers of Greg Stafford's King Arthur Pendragon role-playing game, will once again become the owners and publishers of the game. It was announced yesterday. All rights to King Arthur Pendragon and the Prince Valiant storytelling game have been transferred from the ownership of Nocturnal Media to Chaosium. Greg Stafford, founder of Chaosium and creator of both games, passed away in October this year. The return of these titles to Chaosium has the blessing of Greg Stafford's wife Suzanne and his children. Steve Wyack, speaking for Nocturnal Media on the transition of Pendragon back to Chaosium. There's a story behind this story. In the early 1990s, the staff of Chaosium were celebrating with a feast at Mater's Restaurant in Milwaukee after a successful Gen Con. At the table next to them, the White Wolf staff also feasted on haunches of meat and steins of beer. My brother Stuart and Mark Ryan Hagen, founders of White Wolf, stood and toasted Greg Stafford and the Chaosium crew. Hail to Chaosium, the pioneers, the seers, the shamans, who ignited the flame of storytelling in our role-playing hobby. And the White Wolf table cheered their respect. Naturally, one cannot possibly outdo Greg Stafford, the creator of Pendragon, in matters of feasting etiquette. Thus, Greg rose and toasted back with supreme humility. We were merely keeping the fire lit through the cold, dark night, for we heard in the distance the howl of the wolf and knew the wolf would come to turn the flame to a bonfire. It would be years later that White Wolf would end up acquiring Greg's King Arthur Pendragon game, which had already traveled from Chaosium to Green Knight Publishing. And still later, after White Wolf merged with CCP, ownership of the Pendragon game traveled back to Stuart's new company, Nocturnal Media. Stuart immediately started collaborating with Greg to publish a new edition and supplemental material for the game. Then, both Stuart and Greg passed. and it's been a bit of a cold, dark night. Those of us who remain at Nocturnal have tried to keep the Pendragon fire lit through the night, publishing new King Arthur Pendragon supplements and the Paladin game, but it's clear that for the fire to become a bonfire, the wheels should turn full circle and Pendragon return to its origin, return to Chaosium. We pass the torch to our friends at Chaosium, knowing that greatness awaits. The boy king is ready to become a conqueror. Long live the king. Going forward, King Arthur Pendragon and Prince Valiant titles will be available from Chaosium.com and, of course, at Chaosium's page at DriveThruRPG. David Larkins, who Greg Stafford announced as his King Arthur Pendragon line editor at Gen Con this year, will continue in this role, but now working for Chaosium. So that was some very, very interesting news. And the reason why I actually wanted to kind of mention this is now when Greg Stafford passed away, I did talk a bit about that. Now, Stuart Wyack, and I think I'm pronouncing the name correctly, he passed away. It's been about a couple of years. I think it was 2016 when he passed away. But Stuart was behind Vampire the Masquerade and all the White Wolf, the just explosion of role-playing products that came from White Wolf. And then he started, of course, he went on and began his own company, Nocturnal Media, not that long ago. It's only been a few years back. So when Greg Stafford passed away, I mean, I talked about it, I mentioned it a bit, but I don't think I really was able to present just how important Greg Stafford was to the role-playing game hobby. He created RuneQuest. He basically gave birth to Chaosium. Of course, if you're a fan of Call of Cthulhu, basic role-playing, RuneQuest over the years, because it's come back and forth between different companies and that, then of course you have in some way been touched by Greg Stafford. If you've played any D100 games, you have been touched by Greg Stafford, because Greg Stafford effectively kind of created the whole D100 mechanics of role-playing games. So I thought it was cool to see that that King Arthur Pendragon and that the Prince Valiant, Prince Valiant, the storytelling game is the true title to it, are going to be with Chaosium. Because if you watched yesterday's show, and I did that news piece, I mentioned it. I thought it was very strange because the hardcover books are coming out for Prince Valiant. They're returning to print. And I could have swore originally, because I had the game originally, I could have swore originally it was a soft cover. It wasn't a hardcover. But the weird thing was, there was no mention of it at all on Nocturnal Media's website. There was no mention of it at all on Chaosium's website. It's like, where am I going to kind of point people at to maybe check this out? So since the PDFs had been, available for a while, not a long time, for a little while, I was sending people to DriveThruRPG yesterday and said, when I find out where these are going to be available and who they're available from, I will let you know. Did not realize that it would be the next day. So, anywho, so there you have it. So, King Arthur Pendragon, I always just call it Pendragon. Pendragon and Prince Valiant, the storytelling game, are returning to Chaosium. Another item that I did want to mention, if you watched Monday's show, I did the unboxing for Battlestar Galactica Starship Battles from Ares Games. I mentioned it was supposed to be in stores. I thought it was supposed to hit stores on Monday, which was the 10th. It did. It was supposed to hit stores on the 10th. Now, your friendly local gaming store doesn't have it or didn't have it. I don't know what to tell you, but it is supposed to be available. And looks pretty cool. I still gotta say, those miniatures look really, really sweet. All right, so anyway, so welcome aboard. Thanks for coming in. Things have been a little crazy today. One of the other reasons why I didn't have news today is today was one of my cardiovascular rehab days. So, anyway, and then I had to kind of run around and do stuff, and I was getting back to the house kind of late. So, and I had to make dinner. So, didn't have a whole lot of time to be digging up a bunch of news, but I gotta be honest, it wasn't like a ton of really thrilling news out there right now anyway. So today is Wednesday. Normally I take a look at wargaming on Wednesdays. Call them Wargame Wednesdays, obviously enough, right? But today I want to do something a little bit different because as of this moment, I just have some upgrade kits that we can take a look at from GMT, which I will show off. Don't worry, just not today. But I do have quite a lot of role-playing game stuff and some other items too. So I wanted to kind of tackle that. So today I'm going to be paging through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. This is the 4th edition from my friends at Cubicle 7 Entertainment. Gonna get to that in just a second, just so you know what's popping on episodes the remainder of the week, as well as into next week. Tomorrow I am going to review the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica from Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons and Dragons. It's kind of a setting book for D&D. Then on Friday, and I do want to point out, my mom is actually coming into town from Arizona. So she's actually coming in tomorrow night. I might do the Friday show early. Oh, there you go. Hey, Brent's popping in. Wargaming is role-playing with hand grenades. I don't know if I'll agree on that one. Wargaming's been around a lot long. Well, no, I take that back. Role-playing games have been around for a while, just not the way we think of them. In fact, okay, so normally on Wednesdays I'm talking war games, right? Here's something for you to go take a peek at. It should still float around out there. I'm a big fan of the old naval miniatures game, Fletcher Pratt's Naval War Game. Do a Google search for Fletcher Pratt, and I want to say it's Time Magazine. There's actually an article about this group of college students, and this is like in the, I think it's like 1939-ish, 1939, 1940, and they get together on the weekends and they role play that they are members of various different fictional European countries, and they're at war and all this stuff. I mean, just really, really wild stuff. Just to show you that role-playing games didn't originate, 1974 or something like that. And of course, we've got Avalon Hill Games and Kriegspiel long before that. Anyway, hey, Brant, thanks for popping in. Anyway, so tomorrow I'm reviewing the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Can I just pop that out there? Friday, might do an early show. Might do it like right after I get back from my cardiovascular rehab, so maybe like 4 o'clock Central as opposed to 7 o'clock. That way I can go and go out to dinner with my mom and that. But on Friday's show, I will be unboxing and taking a first look at Mystic Veil from AEG. Yes, I have peeked at and done unboxings for some expansions for this, and of course have not actually taken a peek at the core game until now. Monday's show, we're going to do a little bit of family fun. We're going to actually take a peek at the 1, 2, 3s of D&D, as well as the ABCs of D&D. Both are written by Ivan Van Norman, and they're from Hunter's Entertainment. And I'm also going to unbox and take a first look at Dungeon Mayhem, which is also a D&D product. So on Monday's show, kind of a family D&D game. And then next week, I am also going to do my last-minute gift-giving guide. I'm going to talk about some excellent games that I do recommend that make awesome gifts to gamers in your life, or maybe you can ask for it for yourself. And then on Christmas Eve, I am going to have a show I'm going to share my favorite games of 2018, and I am going to reveal my number one most favorite game of 2018. So that will be on the Christmas Eve show. That's probably going to be an early show too. I don't think I'll be doing it at 7 o'clock. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see what's going on. And of course, I got other stuff cooking. Just got some stuff coming in the mail. There we go. God, that furnace has been cranking. all this time. It is so dry down here today. So dry down here in the Duct Tape Studios. Okay, so I'm sure folks are tuning in. And of course, I will have, in the show notes, the timestamp of when I started looking at Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Anywho, I know people are tuning in because they want to see, isn't it pronounced Werfum? It's like WRFP. No, it's WFRP. It's like Wolfram, I think. I think Wolfram is how Graham Davis was pronouncing it when I was talking to him, and actually shot his hour-long talk about the enemy within campaign. I think he pronounced it Wolfram. Anyway, so I'm sure people are tuning in to see the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. It's written by Dominic McDowell, good buddy of mine, Andy Law, Dave Allen, Gary Astleford, the aforementioned Graham Davis, Jude Hornberg, Lindsay Law, Andrew Leask, taking a wild guess on that, T.S. Lucarts, hey, another pal of mine. I always like talking to T.S. when I run into him at Gen Con. And as well as Clive Oldfield. Artwork is provided by Ralph Horsley, Dave Alsop. Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with Dave's stuff. Paul Bourne, Michael Franchina, maybe. Andrew Hepworth, John Hodgson, who actually just started his own game company. Ralph Horsley, Pat LeBoyko, Sam Manley, and Scott Purdy. The combined 356-page hardcover, I shouldn't say combined, the 356-page hardcover is available for $59.99 as of today. Today it's supposed to be in stores. Supposed to be December 12th, so should be able to track it down at your friendly local game store, or, I know, go to some online retailer, maybe save a few bucks. And go to Cubicle 7 Entertainment, order it from them, or if you want to just get the digital PDF, you can go over to DriveThruRPG and get it for $29.99. And of course, as always, when I mention DriveThruRPG, the Gaming Gang is an affiliate of the Drive-Thru sites. If you're going to make a purchase over at a Drive-Thru site, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banners, and that way, if you do make a purchase, a little bit of that comes my way, and it really does help. All right, without further ado, let's pop on over to the other camera. All right, let me pop on my reading specs here. So let me begin by pointing out I am not an expert as far as Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I will mention that I did have the first edition from Games Workshop. There was a period of time that I used to get a lot of Games Workshop stuff. I picked up the White Dwarf religiously. I was picking up White Dwarf before it was really a house organ for all of Games Workshop's miniatures games. I remember I picked up some White Dwarf issues that had Call of Cthulhu adventures in them, or scenarios in them. But I had the first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Remember it a little bit. Honestly, it was another of the hundreds of role-playing game core books I have had over the years that I had read. But I remember a few little things about it. This is the 4th edition, and of course there have been some changes over the years through the various different editions. From my understanding, what Dominic McDowell and the gang at Cubicle 7 were looking to do is they were looking to kind of return more to the 1st edition, kind of 2nd edition, as opposed to what Fantasy Flight Games did with the 3rd edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. All right, so let's take a look at some of the flavor text on the back. A grim world of perilous adventure. That's pretty much been the tagline for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay since the beginning, I believe. Can't put it down, can you? You know what's in here. You've seen them. The twisted ones, the arrogant ones, the lost ones. Oh, you'd like to walk away and life be all cake and daisies, but you know you're going here instead. You'll try to convince yourself it's because you're greedy for the loot or can't resist the fight. But we all know the truth. So ready your sword, clean your pistol, and watch out for that dog. He might be small, but he's unreasonably vicious. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay takes you back to the old world. Get the gang together, create your anti-heroes, and set off to make your way through the vile corruption, scheming plotters, and terrifying creatures intent on destruction. The Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay rulebook contains everything you need for grim and perilous role-playing adventures in the old world. So one of the aspects of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay that has been very, very popular with people over the years, especially first and second edition, is the not only kind of the horror, fantasy horror kind of aspect to it, because it was really one of the first role-playing games, not called Cthulhu, right? I mean, but it was one of the first kind of fantasy role-playing games that did introduce quite a bit of horror, but it also introduced a lot of kind of humor. So, especially British humor. So, very, very nice book, very nice presentation. Got a pretty cool map here of the Reichland. I believe it's, or is it Reichland? I believe it's the Reichland, but like I said, not positive. I do want to mention that the 4th edition version of the Enemy Within campaign is in the works. I can't tell you when it's going to start coming out. I have absolutely no idea. I do understand that there is a free PDF adventure that's available right now on DriveThruRPG from Cubicle 7. So you'll have there. I think there's another adventure as well. I might be wrong on that, but I do know that there is a free introductory adventure. So what are you here for? Adventure? Maybe. Gold? Probably. Justice? Ha! That's a flexible term. What's that I see in your eye? That pious gleam? Oh, you want to do the right thing? So long as it's well enough paid, entertaining, and fits with your political views? Close enough. You'll do. Come inside. I'll tell you about the job. So another aspect of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay that a lot of people got a kick out of, especially Europeans, because American role players look at their games a little bit differently than Europeans do. And the characters, your character, your heroes in the game kind of start off as kind of pissants, I guess we would say. Just like regular folks. We're talking about throwing bones, talking about using 10-sided dice, talking about using the book. We've got, I have not looked through this yet, so this is all new to me. But I do understand, I think we start off with a pretty good chunk of background about the old world. Because the old world is really a Games Workshop setting that maybe I'm wrong by saying this, but I didn't think it was something that Games Workshop games really supports much anymore. Now it's like all like Age of Sigmar and things like that. So their fantasy aspect, their kind of fantasy background for the games has changed. So the old world is a bit different than newer Games Workshop stuff. Now we're picking up a little bit of glare here. Let's see. I was going to say, if I tilt it, let's just make it worse too. All right. I think when we start getting into like the regular pages, we should be okay. So anyway, I was saying that I believe we start off with quite a few pages with some artwork and some background about the old world. So this game tends to have sort of a, I don't know, 16th century-ish, maybe 15th century-ish vibe to it. You'll notice a lot of the clothing. I mean, there are gunpowder weapons, but of course we're talking, along the lines of like flintlocks, things like that. Maybe even wheel locks, really. Okay, so we're talking about characters. You can roll up random species. So you got humans, halflings, dwarves, high elves, and wood elves. Those are the character kin that you can choose, your species. So, talking about that, it's different artwork. What is that? What are they called? Doomslayers or something like that? Isn't that what that this dwarf is right here? Doomslayer. So we got some of the elves. Pretty nice artwork. Pretty cool. So far in this class and career. So there are a lot of different careers that your character can start off at, and it kind of breaks down into okay. So what's a class? What are there? 8 classes? Yep, there's 8 classes. So you got 8 different classes, but within those classes, you got all these subclasses. So, I mean, you could actually start off as being a beggar or a rat catcher. Options, but I want to play a wood elf flagellant. Okay. Wait, that's not fair. You may notice that not all characters are created equal. An elf has significant characteristic advantages, for example. Don't be deceived by numbers alone. There are many aspects to character generation, and all the species have advantages and disadvantages at each stage, some of them not always obvious. All right, so then we're talking about weapon skill. So I do recall the first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay was pretty much created by miniatures gamers. So there were some kind of, I guess I'll say wonky mechanics to it that had more of the vibe, more of the flavor of a miniatures game than, say, a role-playing game. Now, from my understanding, Games Workshop, when they originally conceived Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, their concept was to make it the anti-Dungeons and Dragons. Because Games Workshop, actually, probably some folks may not know this, but way, way back in the day, Games Workshop was actually the official distributor for Dungeons and Dragons in the UK. And they actually did publish, if I remember correctly, they did publish like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Adventures. And the Games Workshop was a store, was a gaming store. So I want to say they opened that up maybe late 70s. So we got a character sheet summary here, talking about class and careers. So one of the aspects that I think a lot of people got a kick out of was in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is that, and like I said, I think Europeans have a different outlook on the role-playing games than Americans do. Americans tend to, don't get me wrong, I'm not like trying to sit there and say, oh, well, all American role-playing fans are like this and all European role-playing game fans are like this. I'm not trying to say that. I'm not putting everybody in a box, right? But the vibe I have always gotten is that American role players tend to be more kind of like power gamers, or more into the whole min-maxing sort of things, where some Europeans aren't. A lot of Europeans, like there's a lot of European role-playing games where the characters, they become heroes and they become heroic. They're like heroic level characters, but they're never on the scale of what you see in like a Dungeons and Dragons, right? You're not seeing characters where they get to 20th level where they're demigods or vying for godhood at the gaming table. You don't necessarily see that in European style role-playing games. All right, so we got the various different classes. We got the Wizard Agitator. There you go. Is he working in politics here in the U.S.? What's going on? Works for social media? So, okay, like I said, you could be a beggar. So we got artisan, got investigator, merchants. Rat. There you go. There's the rat catcher. Okay, so here's the weird thing. Now, this may be different, but I seem to recall the rat catcher was actually a pretty good starting character because he had a dog, and the dog could be pretty vicious. It could be a pretty good, combat companion for you. So I seem to recall, I never ran Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I'll be the first to admit, I never ran it. I had read the core book, the core rule book. I think I may have picked up an adventure once. And of course, there were some adventures in White Dwarf magazine and that I'd always read, but never did run Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I never ran any of the Warhammer 40k role-playing games either. So, and of course, we've got the brand new one, Wrath and Glory, which is pretty sweet. Mechanically, it's a little odd. Take a little getting used to. But I did like it. I reviewed it. I really did like it. So we got artists, we got duelist. I can tell you right now that we're seeing a variety of body styles in the artwork here. A variety of skin pigmentation, I guess we will say. It's always good to see. I always like to see diversity in role-playing games. Sometimes I think, all right, I'm probably going to get in trouble by saying this, but I think sometimes there are some role-playing books that just go way overboard with just kind of wishy-washy kind of, diversity and all that. I mean, hey, I'm all for opening up the hobby to everybody. I love just all the vast number of different people I've met throughout the hobby. And I mean, I'm all for diversity in life. But I mean, sometimes I think people know where I'm kind of going with this, where it's sort of like, wow, you're just going like way overboard with some of the and I hate to say it, social justice warrior kind of thing. Because I have people who accuse me of being a social justice warrior. And it's like, why? Because I think everybody should be welcome at your gaming table, unless they're a jerk. Somebody's an asshole. Yeah, okay, I don't want them at my table. But other than that. So, anyway, moving right along. So we got hedge witch, herbalist, hunter, miner, 49er, mystic, scout, villager, bounty hunter. Wow, there are a lot of classes. Coachman, entertainer. I should say there are a lot of professions. There are 8 classes. Flagellant. Wouldn't that be more like a cultist? Messenger. Peddler, road warren. Witch hunter, boatman. Huffer. What in the world is a huffer? You pilot ships and boats through the most treacherous waters of the old world. Okay, now I know. It was like huffer. Are you a drug addict or something? What? River warden, river woman, seaman, smuggler, stevedore, wrecker, bawd. I'm gonna take a guess. It's like a bard. Bawd's guide folk to establishment, offering a variety of illegal and immoral services. Okay. All right. Charlatan, fence, brave robber, outlaw, racketeer, thief. So another aspect of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay I recall is it tends to be more granted, it's still fantasy, right? So it's still a fantastic world, and there's magic and monsters and all this other stuff, but it does try to kind of gear towards reality, or I guess we would kind of say more like grim and gritty. Although this isn't like a dark grim sort of game. But it's not high fantasy. It's not what I consider high fantasy. Now, you could have epic adventures. You could have epic campaigns. There have been some campaigns that were pretty long and epic, but I don't consider this like an epic fantasy sort of game. So then now we've got skills and talents. Talking about combat, animals, public speaking, begging, half-heard whispers. These seem to be kind of like, it says options, battle tongue options. These kind of seem to be kind of breaking like that fourth wall, and kind of kind of, well, for an example, they're showing here these are optional rules in that, but it seems almost more like kind of like guidance, kind of like gamer guidance. Some of these. All right. I saw the sign. Options shadowing. Yeah, the old world is a pretty grim place. A lot of thievery, a lot of people trying to double deal you. Like I said, the game is supposed to, kind of take kind of be a twist on the 15th, 16th century, right about there. So, going through all the different skills, quite a few different skills here. I seem to recall in the first edition, maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to recall in the first edition, one of the things that threw a lot of people off was that every weapon did like the same amount of damage. There was no, it wasn't like a two-handed sword did the same amount of damage like as a dagger. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but I could have swore I remember that. All right, so now we're into the rules. Talking about simple tests, dramatic tests, opposed tests, extended tests, combat, conditions, fate and resilience, injury, corruption, diseases and infection, and psychology. So the golden rule, can we assume the golden rule that change the rules however you want? It says the golden rule, the rules exist to help you enjoy epic stories in the Warhammer world, so they should never be a barrier to having fun. Arguably, the most important rule in this book is, if a rule negatively impacts fun for your group, change it or ignore it. Yep. That's pretty much the golden rule for just about every role-playing game. Although, I have heard people say, well, then, if that's the golden rule, what's the point of actually having a rule book then? Sort of funny, kind of true in a way. Talking about the different tests. So basically, how to resolve actions. We got combat. I don't recall combat being like really, really detailed. But then again, like I said, I'm talking about a game I remember seeing. The last time I picked up the first edition to read it was, I don't know, 30 years ago, maybe 27 years ago, somewhere around that. So, yeah. All right, 2-weapon fighting, unarmed combat, moving during combat. Getting tired, how much rest? There's different conditions: bleeding, blinded, broken, unconscious. Fate, resilience. I don't think there's like, I was going to say fate points. I don't think there's any sort of points as far as, like Benny's fate points, those kind of things. Glory points that you can spend to like improve your rolls or re-roll things. I don't believe there's any of that in here. Amputated parts. All right, there you go. Healing, medical attention, corruption. It's one aspect of the Games Workshop role-playing settings that is a little similar between all of them. Is there's that chaos. Chaos is the big bads, and chaos corrupts. So doing certain things will gain you like corruption points, bring you closer to basically the dark side. Well, it's worse than the dark side because chaos is all these demons and things like that. Disease and infection. Wow, we're getting really into gangrene, malaise, pox, blight. We got psychology. Between adventures. Oi, you spilled my point. Inclement weather. So we got different events. We got some tables in here. Endeavors. Money to burn. Yeah, wish we had some money to burn. Self-esteem, flying solo. I say we're kind of not seeing a ton of artwork for a bit. Inventing things. Oh, class endeavors. Okay. Religion and belief. So it looks like we're gonna get, yeah, looks like we're getting a page for each of the religions here. The cults. Cult of Sigmar. Cult of Ulrich, God of War. Are we going to start getting into some of the chaos? Oh, I was going to ask, are we going to get into chaos? Here we go. Chaos gods. I don't recall really there being a whole lot, at least in the core book, a lot towards the characters playing like cultists and things like that, as far as the chaos gods. Now, that's not to say that you have to play, a good guy or good gal in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I don't recall there being any sort of alignments. It's just basically your character, play your character how you think your character is going to be. So you wasn't black and white, a lot of shades of gray. So we've got some miracles here. Now we're going to get into magic. So the 8 different lores, kind of schools of magic. Elven magic, dark magic, warp stone. Got magic rules. Got spells. Miscast tables. I like games that have consequences for failing a spell roll. Dungeon Crawl Classics, I have to say, that's one of the aspects of that system that I do like, is how just really how kind of personalized that Goodman Games has made the magic system, and how each spell is depending on the caster. Everybody's spells are a little bit different. Like a magic missile, everybody's magic missiles don't look the same. Anyway, back to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So, talking about spell lists. Pretty concise as far as the spells, what they do. Not a lot of rambling on. So, color magic, lore of death, lore of fire, lore of heavens. This is not a game where we're going to see like 500 different spells. But of course, as adventures come up and supplements come up, there's always new spells, new things being added in. That's kind of a given with just about any role-playing game. There you go. There's chaos magic. So we're getting some spell. Well, I guess we would get spells because some of the enemies. There we go. In the Game Master. We had to wait until we got to page 258. So we got the Game Master here. We got some general advice, character creation, at the table, travel, visitor's guide. All right. Let's see what we get. I swear, I think it's pronounced the Reich, not Reich as in Third Reich, Reich as in Reichland, Reichland. Timeline. Now, one thing I can say is, interestingly enough, a lot of the first edition adventures have been reprinted right now from Cubicle 7. So I don't know if they're actually in print. I don't know if there's physical books off the top of my head, but I do know that a lot of them have been released in PDF. So, very nice, very cool. Very nice book. Of course, I tell people all the time that I am not a pass or fail kind of reviewer when it comes to mechanics, unless something's like completely broken and doesn't make any sense. But to me, a role-playing game doesn't sink or swim based on just its mechanics. Because I say it all the time whenever I'm looking at role-playing games or doing reviews for role-playing games. Doesn't matter if it's an adventure, if it's a core book, supplement, what have you. I I revamp stuff. I take things out. I put things in. I like to call it kit bashing. I kit bash my RPGs. All right, so now we've got some equipment. I wonder. It's possible. Oh, there are some differences in damage. But it looks as if the weapons are kind of like this. SB might be like kind of like a base damage. So for an example, a halberd is showing plus SB plus 4. Then it's got some qualities and flaws. They're showing qualities and flaws of these. So it's defensive, hack, impale. But it is possible that we're looking at that there's a standard like damage number and your weapon adds a certain amount so that there's no kind of randomness to the amount of damage you do with a particular weapon. I don't know. Okay, so talking about various different armors now. Packs and containers. It is too bad that we're not getting a page, which I always like to see in these books, where we get into the weapons, where it actually shows pictures of the weapons, like a page or two of showing the weapons. So, some people may not know the difference between a halberd, a spear, and a pike. So, oh well. I always like to see that. Food, drink, and lodging, tools and kits, books and documents, trade tools and workshops. Not a lot of information as far as showing the game master how to run the game. So, kind of looks as if this is more along the lines that the assumption is this is not going to be your first rodeo. That this is not going to be your first role-playing game. So now we've got the bestiary, the peoples of the Reichland, ogres. Now we're looking at some examples of human NPCs. Giant spiders. Got to have giant spiders. You have to have giant rats and giant spiders if you're doing any sort of fantasy role-playing game. And it's usually the lower level characters have to fight those. Funny is, I always like to throw spiders in my games when Elliot's playing, my best friend Elliot Miller, because he hates spiders. Can't stand them. So it's always like, you always try to, throw stuff in where you know your friends, right? So, if you're like, I run a lot of horror role playing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to make sure I throw like a spider in here. Not necessarily a giant spider, just I could say, well, he sees a spider walking along and just be like, There you go, the squigs. I remember the squigs. Big bizarre looking. Giants, hippogriffs, griffins, manticores, hydra, pegasi. The greenskin hordes. We got the orcs. Oh, and they're not spelt with a K. They're spelt with a C. Goblins, the snotlings. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Forgot about snotlings. Snotlings are along the lines, if you're not overly familiar with Warhammer, snotlings are kind of along the lines of goblins in Pathfinder. We got the Restless Dead. Yeah, we got Slaves of Darkness. We got the Beastmen. Cultists. Chaos Warriors. Now we got some demons. All right, talking about creature traits. And we got the character sheets. Which of course, I believe it may have been just today or yesterday. I saw that Cubicle 7 was showing that they actually had downloadable character sheets. So that were available on their website, which I thought, well, that's kind of wild. But I guess, like I said, I do believe that this hardcover wasn't available until today. So if you had Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay before that, the 4th edition, you would have the PDF. You could have just printed it out anyway. So there we have it. There are the, oh, here we go. Continue your adventures with Rough Nights and Hard Days. 5 Grim and Perilous Scenarios by Graham Davis. Sweet. Graham's super nice. Really enjoyed talking to Graham. Very, very nice gentleman. And of course, you know, Dominic and the rest of the gang over at Cubicle 7 are aces in my book too. So that is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 4th edition from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. So of course, I will have a review for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition in the very near future. As I mentioned previously, the 356 page, is it 356 pages? Because I got that from DriveThruRPG. Let's take a look. That's 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. Now, that would not be considered 356 pages. Of course, I guess for DriveThruRPG, they consider the cover and back cover a page. So it's about 354 pages. The hardcover is available now for $59.99 or available in PDF from DriveThruRPG for $29.99. All right, and as I mentioned, I will be reviewing this in the very near future, probably within the next couple of weeks or so. Try to get my reviews in about 2 weeks after I bust them open, especially role-playing games, because it does take a bit of time to read through everything. All right, so that is it for today's show. When you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. Well, by now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. I will be back tomorrow with my review of Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.